Hello, everybody. Welcome to Season 5, Episode 7 of the CR Sports Podcast. Thanksgiving is tomorrow. We're fresh off a college basketball podcast. Go make sure you check that out if you haven't. And Thanksgiving games are tomorrow, like I just said. Cowboys versus Commanders, Lions versus Packers, and 49ers versus Seahawks. That's the nightcap. That's on NBC. That's a kind of interesting game. It's a game that they always split. It feels like the Niners and the Seahawks, but Thanksgiving tomorrow. We're excited. We're happy for it. And Garrett, what are you looking for in those games?
Well, Michael, you see the Christmas tree in the background. We're at that time of year where the NFL starts playing games on goofy days at goofy times.
Well,
We got the new Black Friday game this year that you didn't mention.
if you're a fan of the word goofy, that's as goofy as it's going to get because I've never seen a game on Friday before in the NFL, let alone Black Friday. So it's a holiday just because of the shopping discounts, and it's really turned into a true American holiday.
Yeah, I'm not disappointed at all. I'm all for it. I love when there's NFL games on. So the more days we can have them on, the better. The new Thanksgiving night game, which has been introduced the last 3 or 4 years, I really like the idea that they're doing there. It's going to be another, I think, fun matchup tomorrow between the 49ers and the Seahawks. But first of all, we'll go through the playoff picture. We'll discuss where we think not only our teams are standing, but where everyone's standing at. And then we'll sort of dive into the weekly games, discuss who we think's the MVP is going to be, and just a lot more along those lines.
All right, let's go into it. We'll look at the playoff picture. The NFC, you got the one-seeded Eagles at the moment. A big win against Kansas City. They're 9-1. A game that if Marquez Valdes-Scantling catches the ball, it's probably a different story. Patrick Mahomes threw a dime to him on Monday night, just literally a couple of days ago. So it's a lucky win for the Eagles. I don't think there's any other way around that. Travis Kelce also fumbled the ball. They didn't play their best brand of football by any stretch. They did not even play that good. But it was a rainy, mucky, weird weather night, and you could see that in the way that the Chiefs played with the dropped passes. It was like one after another, and the way that the Eagles played really wasn't a good game for like football wise if you look at it. And these are supposed to be two of the top teams in the league. It was a Super Bowl rematch. Big win for Philly though.
Yeah, it felt a lot similar to when the Lions played the Chiefs that
Yeah.
first game of the year. The Chiefs were sloppy, but the Eagles have a really good offense, and the Chiefs' defense just looked really good yet again. Patrick Mahomes and that offense just seem a beat or a tick off so far.
He doesn't have receivers. That's the thing.
Yeah, they're going to have to clean that up, whether it's going and signing someone or just fixing that overall. But the Eagles still have to play the Cowboys once more. The Cowboys sit, I
And
guess, technically 2.5 games back right now because the Eagles have the tiebreaker. But the Eagles by no means have an easy schedule moving forward. They're hosting the Bills this week. They'll play the Cowboys in 3 weeks.
they play the Niners too after that. So
Yeah.
it goes Bills, Niners, Cowboys. That's
So
tough.
there's nothing. The Eagles look like they're the favorite to get that 1 seed in the NFC, but they still have 7 games left to play. There's a lot left to be determined. The Lions are the 2 seed in the NFC. Who thought we were going to be saying that?
And they barely beat the Bears last week, so that was another weird game.
The Lions have a chance to move to 9-2 with a Thanksgiving Day win tomorrow. The Vikings have been coming on a little bit to challenge them maybe for that division, but the Lions have a 2.5 game lead with the Vikings loss to the Broncos. It feels like the Lions have the NFC North in their grasp. I think they're going to close it out and win it.
Yeah, I agree with you. This is definitely their division this year. They have a really cupcake schedule. There's no other really way around that. They're not playing tough teams, and that's obviously due to how they did last year, right? So they're not playing the best teams, and that's it for the Lions. They did good. All credit goes to them. They couldn't win these games at all against any team years ago. Dan Campbell, a lot of credit goes to him, really. And Jared Goff, a guy that's kind of rebounded his career, changed the way that people look at him, and that's interesting to see that Detroit is the 2 seed in the NFC. When's the last time you've been able to say that?
It certainly hasn't been a while. I think part of the weakness in schedule also just goes to their division. They're playing the Packers and the Bears twice. And
that was a close game against Chicago, though. They got lucky with that one.
Yeah, they had no business winning that game. The Bears just can't really close football games right now. Look at the 3 seed. The 49ers feel like they can lock up the division if they beat the Seahawks this weekend.
Yeah, I think they can, and I think they will. This is a Seahawks team that Geno Smith had a slight injury in their last game this previous Sunday, and the 49ers are just kind of better than them. And that 3-game skid that they lost 3 games in a row. People were like, is Brock Purdy just a system quarterback? I think that can be true. I don't think he's one of the best quarterbacks in that elite like MVP tier right now at the moment, but he's a really good quarterback in the game managing situations. He doesn't throw a lot of incompletions. He makes a lot of great decisions most of the time. So it was weird when you saw those 3 games and he was throwing a lot of interceptions, but Purdy's been playing better. They can rely on the run game of McCaffrey and this offensive line, and their defense is very good. So they're an all around very good football team, and that's the same that it's been for the past few years now.
Yeah, and it might feel funny to say they can lock up the division because this game would only put them 2 games ahead of the Seahawks with still a matchup coming later on in the season. But it feels like the 49ers are trending up and the Seahawks are trending down right now. You mentioned the injury to Geno Smith. We don't know how long he's going to be out for. The 49ers, they really set the tone for me when they lost 3 in a row, and then they went into Jacksonville and beat a very good Jaguars team 34-3. So for me, that was really the point where I realized the 49ers, they're going to be a contender in the NFC. There's not much to worry about. I think Brock Purdy's an elite just game manager and system quarterback.
Elite at that, yeah.
I think he's one of the best at that. Kyle Shanahan's offense is just amazing, and he's amazing at running it. I don't think he should be an MVP front runner by any means, but he's a really good quarterback in today's game.
Yeah, he doesn't make a lot of mistakes, and if you value that higher than making really good, unbelievable plays, he's your guy. And that's what Brock Purdy does. He's a guy that's not going to make some boneheaded decision, boneheaded play like Zach Wilson sometimes does, but the Jets would love to have a Brock Purdy, right? It'd be a little bit different. He doesn't have quite the talent in the New York Jets system, but that's what all Jets fans are on their knees begging for. They're looking up to the football god saying, please, can we possibly get a quarterback that doesn't make turnovers, doesn't make interceptions, that are just I can't even fathom it. Like some decisions that Zach Wilson made were terrible. He's no longer the starter in New York. That's behind. We're not talking about the Jets right now, but he's a guy that a lot of teams would really, really like to have.
And then we'll go on to the NFC South. A big matchup in this division this weekend, the Saints and Falcons. Saints currently 500, but they're the 4 seed. They'd host a playoff game if the season ended today. This is going to tell me a lot about both of these teams. The Saints, Derek Carr, the injury question marks. Is it going to be Jameis Winston? I see the Saints getting into the playoffs, but I don't see them doing anything once they get there.
Any NFC South team, Garrett, that wins this division, they're going to be the 4 seed, and I don't think they're going to do anything in the playoffs. It looks like they're going to be first-round exits for that 5 seed that's going to be playing on. Right now it's the Cowboys. It probably will be the Cowboys if they don't win the division.
It would be the Eagles if it wasn't
Yeah, it's going to be the Cowboys or the Eagles, so kind of like a mini first-round bye. But you can't say that. It's the NFL. Anything can happen. The Cowboys lost to the Cardinals, so it's weird, but it's kind of like last year, too. It was a Tampa Bay team that wasn't very good, and Dallas played them. They advanced, and then it's the 4 teams that you're expected to see in the divisional round.
And rounding it out, 6 and 7, we mentioned the Seahawks, who we both are not very high on, struggling. The Vikings, their 5-game win streak finally came to an end. The Josh Dobbs little insanity run may be over.
Yeah.
But there's not much pressure on their heels. As the Packers are 4 and 6, they're the next team that would be in.
It's weird. The Packers have not played that good. I don't really know what to say. They got to win, so I guess they're in it. They're in the hunt, but it's an NFC race that it's like, okay, there's top 3 teams in this conference. It's the Cowboys, it's the Niners, it's the Eagles. I didn't put it in that order just because I'm a Cowboys fan.
I would throw the Lions in there right now.
And it's the Lions. It's weird to put the Lions in there because a lot of the games they play they don't really have a lot of blowouts where they blow teams out. Their defense kind of gives up a lot of points, is what you've seen. So it's interesting. But the 4 locks, we can say the 4 locks are the Cowboys, Lions, Eagles, and Niners.
Yeah, and I would categorize this as a weak NFC, and I'd categorize it as a top-heavy NFC.
Very top.
You mentioned the 4 teams. To me, it feels like the divisional round's almost set.
Top heavy, but Garrett, I would also say, if you compare it to the top of the AFC, it might be higher. I think the best teams in the NFC might match up very well.
Well, I think the NFC, the AFC is a lot more parity. There's a lot wider just margin of good teams in the AFC.
You're saying the wild card round could really change
the wild
things
card
up.
round could be very wild.
Yeah,
and the wild card round in the NFC doesn't look like it's going to be very wild. I think it feels like it's the Eagles, Lions, 49ers, and Cowboys we're going to see in the divisional round. That makes for a very good divisional round, but it also makes for a not very exciting playoff race and maybe a not very exciting wild card round.
And if that were the case, it'd be the Lions facing the 49ers. If the seed stayed this way, it'd be the 2 versus the 3 and the 1 versus the 5. Obviously, everything could still change. Dallas gets to play Philly. 49ers and the Seahawks have to play. Lions could somehow skid. Weird things can happen. You've seen it before in the NFL, but these are the 4 teams that we're really looking at.
Something you can't put out of the picture yet is, I know it's hard to trust the Lions, but they could get the 1 seed. they don't have a very hard schedule, and
That's
the
yeah,
Eagles and Cowboys do.
yeah.
They have
You're
to play hard teams left.
and they have to play each other. And Dallas has 3 losses. The Lions only have 2. So you can paint a scenario right away where okay, let's say the Eagles lose to the Bills this weekend, right? Okay, then there's 2 losses. They're 9-2. Dallas beats the Commanders tomorrow. They're now 8-3. Then the Eagles and the 49ers play. The Eagles lose to the 49ers. That could definitely happen. What happens then? Oh, the Eagles are 9-3. The Cowboys play the Seahawks. If Dallas were to win, then they're 9-3. They play each other. If Dallas were to beat Philly and the Eagles then would lose 3 straight games, they'd be 9-4. Look at the Lions, Garrett. They could be sitting back after the Eagles just lose 2 games. If they lose 2 of those games, and the Lions just like keep winning, they keep on winning. They're playing against their NFC North teams. They're going, okay, I like our schedule. We're doing good. They could be in the prime position for the 1 seed. So people are saying, oh, it's between Dallas and Philly. Who's going to win these games? And is Philly going to actually get beat by a team when it's a close game? Well, look at the Lions. It's really an interesting thing. It's an interesting dynamic. You can't trust them 100% though because you saw games like that against Chicago. So it'd be a Lions thing to have that position. Oh, the Eagles just lost 2 games in a row. Wait, you have more wins than them, and they got 3 losses. You have 2. Oh shoot, the Lions just lost to the Packers. Like that, I feel like that could happen. But no, that's an interesting take, and not a lot of people are really talking about it.
Yeah, and the 49ers, who are 2 games back of the Eagles, you mentioned they play them, so a win would automatically boost them up.
And
But
they have the
they
win
look
over,
like a team who's not going to lose many more games in the
and they
regular
have the
season.
tiebreaker over Dallas because they beat them head to head.
That's a
So
great point there as well. We'll move over to the AFC, where we got one 8-3 team followed by 4 7-3 teams, and then the Texans and the Steelers rounding it out at 6-4. There's just a lot left to be sorted out in the AFC. A lot of inconsistency and a lot of injuries that have just been just harping on team seasons who records might still look all right, but they're going to be tested.
yeah, the Ravens are the 1 seed right now. It doesn't feel like the Ravens are playing amazing football to say. I don't know. They're winning games. They're kind of stringing it along. I think it's kind of similar to the Eagles, to be honest. I feel like they're kind of similar teams when you look at them. Not just saying that because they're the 2 1 seeds in the respective conferences, but it's not like oh they look super impressive. They look to be way better than everybody else. It kind of feels like in the AFC especially, all the teams kind of mesh together and any one of them could beat them, like we were saying before. In the NFC, it's like you could say that about the top 4 teams, or you could say that about the top 3 teams, whatever way you want to look at it. But for this AFC, or even even the top 2 teams in the NFC, people are saying it's the Eagles and the Niners because you can't trust Dallas. Okay, but if you want to have that take, that's fine. Both of them have beat them this year. It was a close game against the Eagles. The Niners blew them out, so it's whatever. But in the AFC, it's like 1 through 7. What? But maybe outside the Steelers, but the Steelers have won games. The Steelers have beat them. So I don't know. Anything could happen in the AFC. It really doesn't feel like there's a true number 1 team, a number 2 team, number 3 team. It's like okay, the Jags are the number 3 team in the conference right now, right? The Texans are right there. They're playing the Texans. That's a great Week 12 matchup. What's gonna happen?
Yeah, the Ravens have looked pretty convincing to me. They just absolutely destroyed the Lions and the Seahawks at home. In like that was 2 or 3 weeks ago. I think they played them back to back. They just obliterated them. They should have beaten the Browns. That was a horrible loss for the Ravens,
They
a
don't.
division
Yeah.
foe. They were up. Their offense looked good for the most part, and then they got in the fourth quarter and they were just like looked like they forgot how to play football.
Right.
And then they bounced back in a nice way though, beating the Bengals, which is another big division win. So the
But
Ravens,
the Bengals, I think you have to put kind of like an asterisk on that. Joe Burrow's out for the majority of the game, and he looks like he came in with an injury. You're playing against Jake Browning. I think the Browns' loss is really what looks really bad for the Ravens.
yeah, I'm bought in on the Ravens. I think they're going to win the division. I think they're going to either get one of the top 2 or 3 seeds. We'll go to the 2 seed, the Chiefs. We've already pretty much talked about them, the inconsistency, how good the defense has been, and how much they've struggled to throw the ball down the field.
Get Patrick Mahomes help. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, and then you mentioned the Jaguars and the Texans. The Texans are all of a sudden chasing down the Jaguars for that AFC South division, just sitting a game behind them, and they'll play them this weekend. So a lot to be figured out there as CJ Stroud's certainly making his MVP case, and he's leading this Texans team to possibly a playoff berth, which nobody really thought was possible coming into the season.
It's not a talent-loaded squad. It doesn't. They don't have superstars all around the board, but it's C.J. Stroud. He's been impressive. It's been D'Amico Ryans. He's been a good coach so far. The defensive coordinator comes over from San Francisco and has an excellent first season already. So that's interesting. Let's see if they could catch the Jaguars. Let's see if C.J. Stroud can go back to his not throwing as many turnovers. We'll talk about the MVP race in just a moment after this, but we'll save that. We'll save that for that segment. But the Texans impressive.
The Miami Dolphins sort of represent an odd group in the NFL, something that we never really see. They beat the teams that they're supposed to, and they lose to the teams that are good and that they may not be favored, which we like never see in the NFL. There's so much just random results. It feels like the Miami Dolphins have been pretty predictable so far.
Yeah, you could make this comparison to the Cowboys. I know I'm a Cowboys fan. I don't want to sound biased, but Dallas has beaten up. I mean, they've blown out all the really bad teams they played besides the Arizona Cardinals. But and then when they get tested with the Niners and the Eagles game was really close. That's a coin flip. But then they got blown out by the Niners. So I think it's a little bit different though because of just the way the two teams are built. I think Tua and the Dolphins, they're like high, like, oh, boom, we're going to throw it down. We're going to just like score like crazy on you. That's what we're going to try to do. We're going to try to go right down the field immediately. Tyreek Hill, throw a deep shot, throw it up to him, let him make a play. And the Cowboys are more, okay, we have really good players. We're going to methodically go down there, and we're going to play really good defense too. And we're a lot of finesse. We're going to beat you up. We're going to hurt your guys, and we're going to play hard. And you've seen that. That's what happened in the Eagle game. Jalen Hurts got a little banged up. Matthew Stafford, after playing the Cowboys, he got hurt. Daniel Jones, after playing the Cowboys. It's like a lot of these quarterbacks, they get real banged up after playing Dallas. And that's a testament to their pass rush. So the Cowboys and the Dolphins, I think, are a little bit similar, but they're also a little bit different. So for Miami, they've had the test against the really good teams, like you said, Garrett, and they haven't stepped up to the plate. And I think that's interesting. They have beaten Buffalo. I don't know how you look at the Bills. Or excuse me, no, they lost to the Bills, right? They get another chance with Buffalo soon, but I don't know. That's one of the teams that they lost to, and they've lost to the Eagles as well. I'm forgetting the third,
Chiefs.
and the Chiefs. Yeah, that was in Germany, right?
Yeah.
That I don't know. It's interesting. The Dolphins, they're at the 4 seed right now. I think it's a pretty decent spot for them,
Yeah.
considering how they've played.
The division doesn't look as strong anymore. I think that game in Miami against the Bills is going to be a huge one. Could possibly decide the division, but the Bills just have a daunting schedule, and they're on the outside looking in. A game that just really frustrated me as a Steelers fan, not only for the Steelers but for the rest of the NFL. The Browns winning and moving to 7-3 with DTR at quarterback.
Dorian Thompson Robinson.
I know the Browns have a really good defense, but they're not going anywhere with this offense in the playoffs. The Steelers, the Browns had negative yards in the second half until that last drive.
Win's a win, baby.
A win is a win, and that's something certainly the Steelers have lived by, but it feels like the Browns are just hanging by a thread right now, and they're going to fall down. I think they're going to really struggle to hold on and make the playoffs without Deshaun Watson, who hasn't even been amazing, but
No, he's been better than.
13 points isn't going to win you a lot of games, except for when you're playing the Steelers.
Hey, their defense is legit. It's very good. Myles Garrett is the reason for that. If they didn't have him, I think it'd be a completely different story. This guy's a game wrecker, and there's a few of them around the league, and he's definitely one of them.
All right, we talked about the Texans. They're sitting in the 6th seed, and then the 7th seed Steelers. Obviously, the offense, they've been outgained in every game.
Go ahead. Go on your rant. Yeah, there you go.
Canada finally gets fired. I'm excited about that, but Kenny Pickett's got to go going into the next year. We can't have him be the quarterback anymore. It's just there's no explosiveness in this offense, and he just doesn't seem like that missing piece at quarterback we needed to fill Ben Roethlisberger. I'm not going to waste any more time talking about Pittsburgh.
The meme pages had a day with Kenny Pickett throwing the ball past the sticks. It's like he didn't complete a single pass. It was honestly ridiculous. It was a really poor performance by Kenny Pickett. It's against a good Brown defense, but still, you're playing in the NFL. You gotta play better than that.
And then the Bills are in the 8th spot. The Bills felt like a playoff lot coming into the season, but just sitting at 6-5, and they got the Eagles in Philadelphia this week. That's going to be a real tester as Joe Brady's sort of first probably close game. Everyone was rejoicing over Joe Brady because he blew out the Jets. The Jets are bad. And then the Colts at 5-5, I don't think are going really anywhere without Anthony Richardson. But the Broncos,
Yep, there we go.
they've won 4 in a row, and they've looked really good. Russell Wilson feels like he's sort of playing like Brock Purdy right now. He's not turning the ball over, and his stats are really good.
Russell Wilson's playing like himself from a few years ago, and not like last year, not the year before. I'm saying like 3, 4, 5 years ago. This is the Russell Wilson that you're kind of seeing. And Cortland Sutton, what a player he's been. He's stepped up for them in their wide receiver role, kind of like what the Chiefs need. They need somebody to step up. Cortland Sutton, he's been a good receiver, but he hasn't been like he's been playing recently. You saw the game against the Bills. He made a catch, got his foot on the side, down on the
That was
sideline in the end zone, somehow got his other foot down.
that was
I
the
have
greatest
no
thrown
idea.
catch I've seen
If
this
you
year.
haven't seen it, look it up. Cortland Sutton catch against the Bills. Just watch it.
And the throw by Russell was like
You're gonna be
insane.
Wilson's off his back foot, just fires it to the end zone,
He
and
was just
somehow
throwing it away.
yeah. So the Broncos, they have a chance. They have a good defense. It was a good win against Minnesota, who's been playing very good. They won 5 games in a row before that. So super interested in the Broncos. They're playing the Browns now. I think that's kind of a tough game for them because you look at the Browns defense and it can really give quarterbacks a lot of problems, and that's what they have been doing so far this season. Whether it be Brock Purdy, like you just compared Wilson to. So Purdy had problems against the Browns. They weren't able to win that game. I know it was a mixed field goal, but tough game, interesting game. Can the Broncos go to 6-5? And if the Bills were to lose to the Eagles, it would be six. They'd have the record advantage over them.
Yeah. And then a couple other teams. Bengals obviously losing Joe Burrow for the season. Them and the Chargers, it felt like I don't want to say playoff locks with the Chargers because I don't know what's going on with that organization, but the Bengals felt like they were a playoff lock. They're sitting at 5-5 right now without their franchise quarterback.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to say. It's sad to say for Bengals fans, but I don't think you're going to be making the playoffs this year without Joe Burrow. And this is the second time now that he's been injured for like almost the whole season. So he's going to miss a lot of time, and it's interesting to see because I have Jamar Chase in fantasy. Do you think he's going to take a big hit? I would assume that he would, as he's one of Burrow's favorite target. So I don't know. I think they're going to rely on Joe Mixon a lot. That's what they're going to try to do. You saw that in the game against the Ravens last week, but tough loss for the Bengals. We'll see if they can try to stay interesting. They're playing the Steelers.
It's a big
so
game for
they
both
they definitely
odds.
they definitely have a chance in that one. I think they do.
They'll take 13 or 14 points to win, but the Chargers, I'm sort of just sick and tired of talking about them.
Brandon Staley's a terrible coach. He deserves to be fired. I don't want to call for anyone's job, but why is this guy still have a job?
They're just underachieving year after year, and it's sort of just getting boring.
You have a really good quarterback in Justin Herbert, and you just don't take advantage of that. You had a monster lead against the Jaguars in a playoff game last year, and you somehow blew it. I mean, what else is there to say? The guy's a defensive coach. He's supposed to be, oh, I'm a defensive coach. I'm supposed to do things that the defense likes, and we're supposed to play really good defense. The defense is the reason that you've been very bad this year. You were up against the Packers, and your defense collapsed and allowed them to come back. And then Quentin Johnson with a huge drop, kind of like the Marquez Valdez-Scantling one. You can't have that in big moments. I know he's a rookie, but he's a guy out of TCU. I wouldn't have expected that out of him. Chargers are not good. But for the Jets, Garrett, let's talk about the Jets a little bit. They're 4-6, and it's frustrating. Zach Wilson's gone, but Aaron Rodgers is eyeing a return. I don't know if they're even gonna. Should they even play him though? Because like it's risking re-injury, and if he wants to play next year, don't you just want to save him for next year and make sure he's all right, or would you play him?
No, for sure, I would definitely not play him because I think the Jets are going to be out of the playoff picture.
That's
by
what-
the
yeah,
time
that's
he
what I
comes
think.
back. Zach Wilson is not a good quarterback. He should not be starting in the NFL. Tim Boyle's not going to do any better.
No.
The Jets' offensive line is absolutely terrible.
And would Aaron Rodgers do? I mean, he would do better, but
He would do better, but
he's,
then
it's a
the
bad offensive
needs
line.
to change. Zach Wilson's like snapping the ball. He has no chance on half the plays.
And I don't want to say this because it was a really small sample size. It was a few plays. But the game against the Bills, it was like, okay, every single play that Aaron Rodgers was in, he was under pressure and like moving around immediately, and that's how he got hurt. So I don't know. I wouldn't be quick to rush him back. I don't think he even really should.
And they got to fix the offensive line in the offseason because it's horrible. And there's no reason to, if the Jets are sitting at 5-10 with 2 weeks to play, why would you bring Aaron Rodgers back?
And Joe Douglas, the Jets GM, he's known this. He's known the offensive line isn't that good. Mekhi Becton isn't the answer. They need to draft more offensive linemen.
Aaron Rodgers isn't a guy who's going to operate with a bad offensive line. Maybe Lamar Jackson, but Aaron Rodgers is going to sit in the pocket and throw. He's not going to scramble and just knife through defenders making plays.
Yeah, all you need to do is just build up your offensive line because if a team has a bad offensive line, they have no chance against any team in the NFL. If you have a putrid offensive line, now they just need to build that up and get better at it.
Similar to the Giants' offensive line. It's just
Oh, yeah.
you can't play with it.
New York right now for football is honestly the most sad scene it's like ever been. The Giants somehow beat the Commanders last week. I don't know how
Giants just really have the Commanders' number
with
for some
Tommy
reason.
DeVito. It's a divisional game. Okay, you can say that, but wow, they are a really bad team when they play some other divisional teams that they play against. And I'm talking about my favorite team, the Dallas Cowboys. Yeah, it feels like against every team though, their offense and the second year of Dable and Shane at the helm. Joe Shane, the GM, Brian Dable, the head coach. Dable, the coach of the year last year. I don't know. I
Well,
don't know if he's the answer because when the way he even operates is very interesting to me. And calling out your players like just straight up to their faces with their quarterback play that you're getting, I don't think that's really right. Like you saw him talking to Tommy DeVito, a guy who just is not an NFL quarterback by any stretch. He had a career day against the Commanders. I don't know. Maybe that's just a once in a blue moon thing. That's what I think it is. But he's not a good quarterback. And you see him against Dallas. Dable Garrett, he literally looks at him like this when he's walking out, like he's all pissed off. Like, come on, dude. This, it's not a good quarterback. And I think you've seen that anger from him really boil up and spill over into the players on the sideline as well with the Giants throughout games, and it, even from Tommy DeVito's dad. But the Giants are a terrible team. The Jets are not a good team. It's football. Football in New York right now is not good. It hasn't been a good year for New York sports as a whole. The Jets and oh my God, the Jets and the Yankees, the Mets and the Yankees, both bad in baseball this year. Didn't make the postseason, and it's gonna be the same for the football teams and the Jets and the Giants.
well, the Giants are just absolutely crushed by injuries. It's hard to give them a fair evaluation because
And
of all the guys they're missing. Their offensive
and
line,
they probably overperformed last year.
yeah, well, they definitely did overperform a little bit last year. I don't think Daniel Jones should be the guy moving forward, although this injury might buy him another year.
Yep.
And the offensive line wasn't good before the injuries, but they've just been absolutely dust. Their defense is actually very solid, but on offense, they just stand no chance with the guys they're rolling out there. To me, I'm really concerned that the Jets want to pursue Devontae Adams in the offseason. You need an offensive line. You don't need Devontae Adams. Garrett Wilson and the rest of the receiving core, they'll find a way to get it done if you get Aaron Rodgers an offensive line.
Alan Lazard and Randall Cobb, the guys that Rodgers wanted to bring over, they have not been good. But the answer is not Devontae Adams. You have a Garrett Wilson who hasn't played that great the recent weeks. Yeah, it's a couple of drops, but what does he have at quarterback? Like, it doesn't make a difference, right? Uh, you don't need Devontae Adams. You need an offensive line. Your defensive line is very good. Your defense is really good. Your linebackers are really good. Your secondary is really good. Everything about your defense is good. I feel bad for that defense because if they were on another team, think about a team that they could be on. What if the Chargers had that defense, right? They would be a different team. Oh, I don't know with Brandon Staley, but there's a lot of teams that don't have the best defenses around there right now. Even look at Buffalo, the injuries that they've sustained. If they had a healthy Jets defense, they would be in a better position. You can say that for a lot of teams. If they had a Jets defense, oh wow, they'd be a good spot. But
It just puts such a dent in your locker room, too, when the defense is getting all these stops and making all these plays, and the offense is just not getting it done.
yeah, that's
Look
what
at
that's all that needs to be
It's
said.
different when the Steelers defense is complaining about the Steelers offense when the Steelers are 6-4.
Yeah,
It's different when the Jets are 4-6 and just everything just feels like it's boiling over right
the,
now.
the
So,
record matters. The record matters.
all right, we'll go over now. Just quick recap through the games this week. Packers, Lions. Not much to say here. The Lions looked shaky last week. I think they'll bounce back. They usually play well on Thanksgiving. I think they'll get a big win here.
Yeah, this could be an interesting game. Obviously, the Lions going with their throwback Thanksgiving jerseys with the silver helmets and the lighter blue jerseys that they wear. The Lions, though, I don't know. I think this is a game where the Packers could maybe make it a little bit close, make it interesting, but I think the Lions are going to take it at the end.
Yeah, the next game, Commanders, Cowboys. I think the Commanders will keep it close. I think Sam Howell will throw a couple touchdown passes, give some excitement into this game in the first half, but at the end of the day, I think the Cowboys will run away with it in the second half.
Yeah, I don't know. The Cowboys, in previous Thanksgivings, it's been up and downs. Interesting games for me. It depends how my Thanksgiving goes. It feels like it's like, oh my gosh. The Raider game a couple years ago was really frustrating. The Bills game was frustrating. But when it feels like when they play the Commanders on Thanksgiving, not a lot goes wrong. And it feels like they always find a way to pull out the win. I think it's going to be the same tomorrow. This Dallas team is just better than this Commanders team, and they're going to beat them up, I think.
Yeah, I like Sam Howell. I think he could be the future in Washington. But really, when I look at this from an NFL fan point of view, the game's at 4:30. I'm sitting down. I'm watching a little bit. I'm eating my Thanksgiving dinner. I'm watching a little bit after it. I love when these games are close. I hate when there's just a blowout in the Cowboys game because then there's nothing else to watch.
Right.
This game needs to be close.
Well, I hope it's not, but I think Dallas, either way, if it's close or if it's a blowout, it's going to be in favor of the Cowboys.
And then we'll have 49ers Seahawks, the divisional matchup. We sort of already touched on it.
Yep.
I think we're both siding with the 49ers here. Although Lumen Field on Thanksgiving night, that place could be rocking.
It could be. It feels like we haven't really talked about. I mean, now it's a Lumen Field, but the 12th man for the Seattle. That's what they call themselves. The fans there, they aren't really talked about as like, oh, this is the place to play anymore. Remember 2014, Garrett, with the Legion of Boom days, and it was like, you're going into Seattle? Okay, good luck. It's like saying, oh, you're going into Arrowhead? Oh, you're going into Lambeau when the Packers were really good, right? But this is going to be a tough game. Um, the conditions probably will be interesting to see. It's a night game there. It's in Seattle. Geno Smith, will he play? That's the question mark. But I think overall, this is a 49ers team that's just confident wherever they go. And they also got fans wherever they go. So I got the 49ers in this one, and so do you. I think they're going to show that this is their division.
Yeah, the Seahawks, it feels like a lot of their home games are in that 4:05 slot. They're never America's game of the week. They're playing like the Rams and the Cardinals a lot. It feels like they just grind out wins when no one's really paying attention, and that's how their record looks so good. And then whenever they get in these big games, you realize, okay, the Seahawks are not really that good.
Yeah.
Dolphins and Jets, first Black Friday game. You mentioned what feels like a booming American holiday is going on. This game will take place at 3 o'clock. Interesting time decision there. We just rampage the Jets and how bad they are. Dolphins should win this game. I like to see the Dolphins offense look a lot better. It feels like the last couple of weeks they've been coasting.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. The game last week, it was kind of close. They only won by 7, I think, against the Raiders.
They just kept punting it back to the Raiders, turning it over to the Raiders, and the Raiders couldn't do anything.
Yeah, so they can't play like that, but they probably can. Let's be honest, against the Jets. You don't want them to play like that if you're a Dolphins fan. You're not looking for them to play like that, but they can play like that. It's the Jets. The Jets offense is really not going to do much with Tim Boyle, so this is the Dolphins. The Saints Falcons, that's a more interesting game. We already really talked about it. This is for the NFC South. I think the Saints are going to win it. I don't think the Falcons are that good, but it's a divisional game. It's going to be close. It's going to be interesting. But I think overall, this is a Saints team that is just straight up better than the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah, Desmond Ritter back in at quarterback. He's been really good at home in both his college and his NFL career. I'm actually going with the Falcons in this one.
All right.
I want the Saints to win because I think they have more boom or bust potential, I'd say, which could win you a playoff game than the Falcons. It feels like we know what we're going to get with them. And that gives you a 7-9 record or a 8-9 record now with the extra game, but sort of the least competitive, least interesting division I think most football fans would agree on.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with that. And we already talked about how whoever they really play in the first round, they're probably going to lose. And it'll be a home game for them,
Yeah.
but I don't think it really will matter that much.
We got the Steelers and the Bengals, a huge divisional matchup. Feels like loser of this one season might start to fall down the drain if it's the 6-5 Steelers with Kenny Pickett looking not very good, or the Bengals at 5-6 without Joe Burrow. So it's a big divisional matchup. The Steelers want to stay in that playoff hunt, and for the Bengals, even a win here, it just feels like a lot of the air has been deflated because of the Joe Burrow injury.
Yeah, I don't think the Bengals are really going to do much the rest of the season without Joe Burrow. It's tough to say, but it's the truth. They're not going to be some contending team in the AFC. Maybe they can get the win, some of these wins, become 6-5, have a chance be in that playoff hunt that we like to call it, but the Bengals without Joe Burrow is just something that's not going to really work. And the Steelers, on the other hand, they play complementary football. If Kenny Pickett can do just a little bit, help out the defense, then they can still be in the playoff position, stay in the playoff race, try to get that 7 seed. But what I'd look out for is the Houston Texans. They're coming for the Jaguars, and this is a more fun game that we're going to look at now. 6-4 Texans, 7-3 Jaguars. I think the Texans are going to win this football game. I think they're better than the Jaguars. I really do. C.J. Stroud. Let's talk about him. He's an MVP candidate, but at the same time, he's a rookie with not a ton of talent around him, and he's just helping them win. And you haven't seen this. It kind of feels like the younger Deshaun Watson when he was there in Houston. So the Texans are promising. The Texans have a chance to do something in the playoffs, and the Texans have a real chance to win the AFC South.
Yeah, we'll talk about the MVP conversation for a little bit here. Is I think the Jaguars are going to win this game. Trevor Lawrence finally had a really good game this year. It felt like he was sort of just managing games. His stats weren't great. Finally went out, had 4 touchdowns, 2 passing, 2 on the ground. I think he's going to show up in a big way again, and they're going to get the W. As for the MVP conversation, I really don't think there's been one guy who's just separated himself. It feels like in years past we've been like, oh, maybe it's between these 2 or 3 guys, but these 2 or 3 guys have really earned it, or this one guy has been the favorite. It feels like right now Texas Stroud or CJ Stroud has just been the storyline, and then we're just looking at the next couple guys with the best stats.
I think CJ Stroud. I honestly think CJ Stroud and Dak Prescott are the two guys that should be your kind of front runners in the MVP conversation at the moment. And that's something that you look at the statistics. Dak Prescott, the highest rated quarterback according to Pro Football Focus, a PFF grade. CJ Stroud, he's close right behind him. Brock Purdy's also in there too. But as we talked about before, Brock Purdy's not really lighting it up in the way that an MVP really does. And Stroud and Prescott have been. And the funny part is the comp to CJ Stroud coming into the league was Dak Prescott. To see both of them kind of in that race. And Cowboys haters, you can't deny it. Right now, Dak Prescott, you look at his numbers, he only has 6 interceptions this year, a lot lower than a lot of the other quarterbacks around the league. Maybe the lowest, I think, or very close to. He threw a lot last year. People were like, this is a big problem for him. He straightened it out. He's playing better football. He's utilizing CeeDee Lamb. And then you look at CJ Stroud. Him and Tank Dell, two rookies, they've been getting it going. And Tank Dell's like this deep shot that like I feel like it happens every game. You see, oh, let's take a game break, right? And boom, Tank Dell, 60-yard touchdown. Boom, Tank Dell, 40-yard touchdown. CJ Stroud just like throwing it up in the air off like a back foot or like jump pass that one of them was this last week. So he's been fun to watch. He's been really cool. Caution on CJ Stroud a little bit. They played the Cardinals. I know that's a team that did beat Dallas, who we're talking about Dak right now, but it was closer because of the turnovers that he had that he wasn't having in the beginning of the year. He kind of shied away from having any turnovers or any interceptions. He didn't throw one for a while, but then 3 picks the last game. Just got to watch that. But I think the MVP race, in my eyes, is between those two quarterbacks, as it is a quarterback award, it feels like.
And to me, it doesn't really feel like there's been an MVP this year. Obviously, someone's going to win the award. They're not just going to like not give the award to someone, but it feels like we're just looking at the people with the best stats. And you mentioned Dak Prescott, CJ Stroud. You can't deny their stats. At the end of the day, the award probably should go to somebody with the best stats. It's a stats-based award and it's a quarterback award, but it just feels like there hasn't been 1, 2, or 3 guys who it's been like that guy should be and is an MVP or he should be in the conversation. It just feels like there's been a lot of just solid play, and Lamar Jackson felt like 4 or 5 weeks in he was the guy. He doesn't seem like he's the guy
No.
anymore.
Yeah.
There isn't like a one guy you can point to being like he's the face of the NFL right now.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we'll try to look for and see if it comes around. But if anyone emerges as that, but I really don't think it's going to be. I think it's going to be what we've been talking about. It's the stats that we're going to look at. It's the statistics. I can't really say that word, but yeah, it's interesting. Now, for the rest of these games, we go back to this. Not very interesting. Buccaneers, Colts, Patriots, Giants. We talked about how bad the Giants are. Patriots have been awful as well. And then Panthers, Titans. So those are 3 games that are not so fun in any stretch. Rams, Cardinals, not really fun either. Broncos, Browns. We talked about this already. Very interesting game. Can the Broncos continue to play very good football and win some games? And can the Browns, without a real quarterback, can they win some games and rely on their defense heavily? Fun and interesting to see. And then Chiefs, Raiders. This is another game that you're looking for the Chiefs to bounce back, and the Raiders have played competitive with Antonio Pierce as their new head coach.
Yeah, Antonio Pierce, just the firing of I'm blanking on his name.
Josh McDaniels.
McDaniels. Yeah, Josh McDaniels was just like probably the highlight of the Raiders season. Aiden O'Connell's not that good.
Highlight of the Raiders player season.
Yeah, Aiden O'Connell's not very good, but you can just tell it almost feels like the Steelers right now with the Raiders. The quarterback isn't there, but because of the coach and the rest of the roster, they've been able to grind out wins, and they're sitting at the 4-6 record. And then the Browns might not be the most exciting matchup in terms of the score, but it's very influential, especially in terms of the AFC playoff picture. And then America's game of the week, it's the Bills, it's the Eagles. everyone wants to say, "Oh, Ken Dorsey was horrible," and Joe Brady is like the best offensive coordinator ever because they beat the Jets by like 25. But we're gonna learn a lot more from him in this Bills offense since the firing of Ken Dorsey and how the Eagles look against the Bills team who has a lot to prove.
They do have a lot to prove, and they have a real chance. This is a game where if the Bills win, they're 7-5, and they're saying, "Okay, we can relax, we can breathe. We've gotten back to winning football. We've won games. We beat a really good team. We beat the one-seeded NFC team. They just beat the Chiefs. We could do this." And if Josh Allen plays really well and they're on the same page and Joe Brady puts together a good game plan, the Bills can do that. My question is this Bills defense, they have a lot of injuries this year, and they're going up against the Eagles. With A.J. Brown and a number one corner for the Bills, I don't see anyone being able to cover him, and that's the issue. Then they also have a guy named Devontae Smith, who's been very good as well. So that's where I think this Eagles passing attack is really going to hurt the Browns. But hey, the Chiefs have a really good defense, and they were able to limit them. But I think the Bills' defense, and especially their secondary, is just a tick below.
And the Bills have their bye week following this game. I think maybe they wanted it before this one, but if they can just somehow get to that bye week at 7-5, it's going to be a huge win and just a regroup position.
7-5 is a
for
lot
them.
different than 6-6.
It is. It truly is, especially with everything that's happened with them recently and coming off such a big game against the Eagles. As we move into the Sunday night matchup between the Ravens and the Chargers, a team who we like to bash a lot on the CR Sports podcast, and the Ravens, a team who I'm a little higher on them than you are. They're sitting atop the AFC, but I think this is going to be a good game. But if you're asking me who's going to win a close game, Harbaugh or Staley, I'm going to go Harbaugh.
Yeah, I agree with you, Garrett. I'm not that high on the Ravens at a crazy level like other people are, but I'm high on them for this game. I think they'll definitely win this one. I don't think it'll be really close at all.
And then we got the Monday night matchup between the Bears and the Vikings. Some of these primetime games, I wish we could, flex down, flex some other games up.
Bills, Eagles.
When we hear the Bears and Justin Fields at the beginning of the year, we like to put them in prime time.
I think I'd rather watch
The Bears are 3-8.
the Broncos and the Browns on a primetime game.
When the Bears are 3-8 now, I don't want to watch the Bears on prime time anymore. But the Vikings could get to 7-5, and they're probably gonna make the playoffs unless a team can come out of the woods and catch them.
No, I agree.
But Josh Dobbs has looked. Last week he had some turnovers. He didn't look as good, but he feels like he's given this team life when they lost a lot after the Kirk Cousins injury.
Yeah, and Josh Dobbs, he's a genius off the field. He's a rocket scientist basically, and he didn't play like a crazy genius last game against the Broncos, but before that he was, and it's like, wow, it's impressive what he's done just being in the system for such a short period of time. This is a game that they should go out and win, and they should be 7-5. So we will see what happens.
And I'll get Justin Jefferson back as well this week, which is just absolutely huge.
Yeah. So interesting games all around the NFL this week. This was a long episode. We're at 43 minutes now. Action packed. Talking about the Thanksgiving games, talking about the Black Friday game, the Monday night game, the Sunday night game, and then a whole bunch of the games in between on Sunday. So we talked about a lot this episode with where the teams stand playoff wise and who we think our contenders are going to be. But it's fun. We're still going to cover the NFL. Hopefully every week. We didn't get last weekend predictions in, but we'll always get analysis for the previous week. So I know there was a few people that were excited to watch this episode, and we thank you. It means a lot to us. So thanks for listening, everybody, and yeah, have a happy Thanksgiving.